Live from London, this is Global Business.
Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Juliet Mann.
And I'm Paul Barber. Our top stories. Iran declares 5 days of mourning over the death of President Raisi in a helicopter crash as world leaders send their condolences.
Unrest in New Caledonia sends the price of nickel surging. The French territory holds some of the world's biggest deposits of the mineral.
Ryanair lands bumper full-year profits but warns that seat prices will not be taking off this summer.
With ancestry dating back to the Jurassic period, a pair of rare Chinese giant salamanders are the stars of a new reptile exhibit at London Zoo.
Iran has declared 5 days of national mourning following the death of President Ebrahim Raisi in a helicopter crash. World leaders have sent condolences, including China's President Xi Jinping, who called Raisi a good friend.
Bodies have been recovered from the crash site in a mountainous region near the Azerbaijan border. Iran's foreign minister was also killed, along with other senior officials. Vice President Mohammad Rohba has been confirmed as the country's interim president. Well, our correspondent Ehsan Kivani is in Tehran. Ehsan, bodies have now been recovered from the scene, but it took the search teams a long time to find them, didn't it?
That's right. As you know, President Raisi and his delegation were coming back from an inauguration ceremony for a dam on a joint river between Iran and Azerbaijan. After the inauguration, Raisi was going to some petrochemical facilities in Tabriz for more inaugurations. Around 3 p.m. local time yesterday, his missing helicopter was reported, and immediately dozens of thousands of rescue workers from Iran's Red Crescent organization moved towards the location. The area near Varzagan, where the incident happened, is mountainous and impossible. Heavy fog and low visibility also prevented the search and rescue operation. That is why after almost 15 hours, that was Monday morning, the crashed chopper was found. There were conflicting reports whether domestic drones detected the crashed helicopter or it was drones provided by Turkey. However, rescue workers rushed into the spot, but as expected, unfortunately, all 9 people aboard had been killed, including President Raisi, Foreign Minister Amir Abdullahian, Governor of East Azerbaijan Province, and other officials. Back to you in London.
Ehsan, what's the reaction been like inside Iran in terms of the man himself and his popularity, but also what's the general mood like?
Well, the country's supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei offered his condolences on the passing away of President Ebrahim Raisi and declared 5 days of public mourning. The leader also appointed the first vice president as the manager and the executive power, which is like interim president within with the same authorities as the president. The incident has led to the closure of the stock exchange market and cancellation of all sports events across the country. On Tuesday, the bodies will be transferred from Tabriz to the religious city of Qom, south of Tehran, for funeral ceremony. On Wednesday, the body will be in Tehran for funeral, and finally it will be transferred to Mashhad for burial on Thursday. Regardless of political taste and whether people liked his performance or not, Iranian people are generally shocked here. And messages of condolences are coming from all the officials, celebrities, and ordinary people. The former Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif says the U.S. should be blamed for this incident, for sanctioning the sales of aviation industry parts to Iran. Zarif says such sanctions are against the rulings of the International Court of Justice, and Washington must be responsible for such sanctions.
Eshan Kivani in Tehran, thank you very much.
Our correspondent Li Jianhua takes a look at some of the global reaction to the death of Ebrahim Raisi.
The sudden loss of two Iranian top officials has shocked the world. Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi was sworn in 2021 and vowed to protect the political, economic and cultural independence of Iran. Hossein Amir Abdullahian's tenure as Iran's foreign minister was marked by his efforts to end Iran's isolation and offset the impact of the U.S. sanctions on Iran over its nuclear program. Several world leaders have expressed their condolences. Chinese President Xi Jinping said China has lost a good friend.
President Xi pointed out that since taking office, President Raisi made significant contributions to maintaining Iran's security and stability and promoting the country's development and prosperity. He also made active efforts to strengthen and develop a comprehensive strategic partnership between China and Iran.
It is a very sad day.
The foreign ministers of Pakistan and Turkey have also expressed their condolences on the sidelines of a bilateral trade negotiation.
We offered condolences and fatiha for the bereaved, for the deceased people, and also offer prayer for the bereaved families, for the patients. We both brothers, had, great sorrow and sadness on the hearing of this news.
Lebanon's armed group Hezbollah has issued a statement calling Raisi a brother, strong supporter and a staunch defender of Hezbollah's causes. Saudi Arabia, which restored diplomatic relations with Iran last year under a deal brokered by China, also offered its condolences to Iran. Other countries and groups that have sent condolences include Russia, Iraq, Qatar, India, Hamas, Yemen's Houthis and the European Union. Li Jianhua, CGTN.
Mohsen Milani is Professor of International Relations at the University of South Florida and also the author of an upcoming book, Iran's Rise and Rivalry with the United States in the Middle East. Thanks ever so much for coming on the programme. Now, look, some commentators are calling this a delicate moment for Iran. What's your take?
Thank you for inviting me. It is a sensitive moment, but I don't think Iran is in danger of disintegration or going through a crisis. There is a constitutional process that has already been set in motion. The Supreme Leader has appointed the first vice president to replace the president, the deceased president, and he has already met with the Speaker of the Parliament and with the head of the judiciary to be in charge of the country for the next 50 years until a new round of presidential election is held. I think there is going to be continuity, quite a bit of continuity, and I don't expect much turmoil during that period.
So in terms of filling this power vacuum, you're saying the focus is very much on continuity. It's not going to be a catalyst for change.
That is correct, and that is partly because the Islamic Republic is well institutionalized, but there is also another element, and the element is that in Iran's constitutional system, the Supreme Leader is the final decider, is the final authority on deciding and determining the country's strategic orientation and the domestic policy of the country. And Ayatollah Khamenei is in office and is in control of the situation.
Although Raisi was often billed as being his protege and possibly the next, or the Supreme Leader in waiting. I mean, look, we've got elections around the corner, so who's likely to run? Is the ruling party popular enough to win if those elections are going to be free and fair?
That is the million-dollar question, because in the last presidential election in 2021, Mr. Raisi won the election, but the process, to be honest with you, was rigged because so many of his rivals were disallowed to participate in the election by the powerful Guardian Council. And as a result, they had the lowest voter turnout in the history of the Islamic Republic. Wow. Now there is an opportunity for the system to make a course correction and allow people from different factions to participate in the political process in the upcoming election, because Iran is going through a very sensitive period precisely because of the question of succession to Ayatollah Khamenei, which is much more important than what happened yesterday in Iran.
And something else which is very important is, of course, Iran's relationship within the region and with other places around the world. What impact might all of this have on that relationship?
I think very little impact, if any at all. When it comes to foreign policy, the Supreme Leader exercises considerably more power than he does internally. As a matter of fact, if you look at the Islamic Republic's foreign policy for the past 45 years, you see considerable degree of continuity despite having different presidents, despite internal bickering, internal disputes. And the reason for this continuity is that just like China, just like in Russia, there is one centralized authority that makes important decisions about foreign policy, and it is the Supreme Leader with the help of Iran's Revolutionary Guard. And what happened in Iran 2 days ago will therefore have no impact on how decisions are made and who makes those important decisions.
Mohsen Milani, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And you're watching CGTN. Still ahead. Unrest in New Caledonia sends the price of nickel surging. The French territory holds some of the world's biggest deposits of the mineral.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
I think it should be more global cooperation.
I would like to hear more the voice of the developing countries.
Globalization has lifted more than 1 billion people out of poverty.
The green transition has to happen. It's a necessity.
For China and the United States are important powers in the world.
What unites us is much more than what divides us. And I believe China is committed to this agenda.
Join me, Juliet Mann, to set the agenda at these times every weekend on CGTN.
Events have consequences. Words create impact.
One more offensive in a long line of battles that's been ongoing for more.
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots. Excuse us.
The world today matters for your world tomorrow.
The number of casualties is growing quickly.
Why, this is one of the hardest hit towns in the region.
The world today, every day on CGTN.
Welcome back to Global Business Europe. Europe's largest budget airline, Ryanair, has posted a record full-year profit of just over $2 billion. That's a 34% rise on the previous year. And while the results were better than expected, the Irish carrier warned that fare sales across its network this summer would now only be flat or modestly ahead of last year, down from a previous forecast of 10% increase.
Yeah, the company also said it would be 23 jets short of the number Boeing was due to deliver by the end of July, with the risk of further late deliveries. Well, the news pushed Ryanair's share price down around 1.6% on the Euronext. However, it's still up more than 17% on the year. Well, John Strickland is an independent aviation business strategist, and he joins us now to tell us a bit more about all of this. Welcome back to the programme, John. So what's going on here? This is good news, perhaps, for consumers and holidaymakers getting maybe cheaper tickets than they were expecting this summer.
Well, this is a line that Michael O'Leary has been communicating today, but it is a benefit for consumers that fares are going to be a little bit softer than expected. But what we should do is put it in context. Of course, coming out of COVID, as airlines began to fly summer 21, summer 22, we talked about pent-up demand. People were flying almost at any price. Capacity was quite limited. And fare levels were going up to levels not seen previously. I think it was probably quite ambitious to expect fares would go up substantially again a third year in a row. So what we've heard from Ryanair today is the current quarter running through till the end of June is relatively soft. We also need to remember Easter fell in this quarter last year. This time around it doesn't. But the real peak period, July, August, September, when schools are on holiday, is looking stronger, albeit, as we've just been saying, fare levels not quite as high as expected. But it's still pretty positive from an airline point of view. We've seen similar commentary from EasyJet, demand looking strong, but people are not really prepared to pay that much more.
So where do you see demand going, and have we really seen the end of the so-called staycation, which of course we saw just after COVID, people having their holidays domestically? Are people really now much more keen to get overseas and spend their summer holidays in the sun?
Well, people are still travelling strongly. I mean, Ryanair is seeing volume growth. Ryanair is adding aircraft to its fleet, as is EasyJet. Of course, the backdrop for the industry is a shortage of capacity. Ryanair will be about 20 aircraft or so light of what it expected to be, so it can't resource maybe as much demand as it would wish to. That's similarly the case with Wizz Air, who we'll hear reporting on Thursday. They, in particular, have a larger problem. About a quarter of their fleet, or close to a quarter of their fleet, is currently grounded. They fly Airbus aircraft powered by Pratt & Whitney engines, which are having to go extensive maintenance repairs due to underperformance of a particular type of engine. But demand is pushing up against the buffers with airlines like those two, and indeed other carriers in the market. But there are always unknown factors. We've had a pretty wet spring, certainly in Northern Europe, but that's pushed people to fly more. We've got perhaps a wild card even of the Olympics in the summer this year, which some people may decide to stay at home there. And also factoring into consumer consideration is not just the price of tickets, but of course everything about a holiday. We've seen increases in restaurant costs, increases in hotel prices, not to mention the cost of living generally. So while people may not be travelling less, they are very much more focused on how much they can afford to spend on those much sought holidays.
And let's talk a little bit more about those aircraft capacity issues. How big a problem is Boeing's delay in aircraft deliveries for the broader European airline industry? And do carriers simply not have enough planes? And is there any sign of that improving soon?
Well, it's a significant problem. Actually, Ryanair is the one who is hit most because they have an all-Boeing fleet. They've got over 550 aircraft in their fleet. They were expecting to take delivery of around about 40 to 50 or so additional Boeing 737 MAXs this summer. As I mentioned, there will be about 20 light of that figure. They're going to have to take some later in the summer than expected, which is not really terribly valuable because the peak is past. Ryanair won't be able to make full advantage of that capacity. Other airlines around Europe are less impacted. Not so many have large fleets of Boeing aircraft as far as short flights are concerned. But then the Airbus problem is much more prevalent. Wizz Air, as I mentioned, with a fleet of about 160, 170 aircraft currently, has a quarter of them grounded. Other airlines, for example, Vueling in the IAG group, Lufthansa is another that have aircraft powered by these Pratt & Whitney engines. So those aircraft are not available. The manufacturers talked about downtime per aircraft in the region of 350 days. So that's the best part of the year to get those engines fixed on those aircraft. And Airbus already did have delivery delay challenges anyway alongside Boeing. So that keeps capacity pretty tight. And it doesn't look like a problem that's going to go away quickly. So it's going to continue to vex airlines, not just in the months ahead, but probably running into next year as well.
OK, John, we always appreciate your insights. Thank you very much indeed. John Strickland.
Well, fresh from a week of record highs, US stocks are little changed after the Dow closed above 40,000 for the first time. The market is braced for some heavily anticipated news this week as AI chip giant NVIDIA announces its quarterly earnings. Let's talk to John Terrett, our correspondent extraordinaire on Wall Street. John, always good to see you. There's one big earnings report, isn't there?
You know, there really is. And the thing to remember is that first quarter earnings have been far better than anybody thought they would be, which means that the companies that have been giving us their earnings have beaten Wall Street expectations. And so talk about keeping the best for last. We're right at the end of earnings season now for the first 3 months of the year, and we don't get the company that we're talking about until Wednesday. So we've got to wait the rest of the day, all of tomorrow, and then Wednesday after the closing bell. And this company is the poster child for AI, and AI is everything. If you look back to the earnings I was just talking about, many of those companies beat Wall Street because they managed to monetize artificial intelligence, AI. And if you don't think it's here now, just you look at your Facebook and WhatsApp search engines. Those are AI driven now. And in fact, I think on WhatsApp, they actually advertise the fact. And to help you understand, you know, I think what in its simplest form, what AI is going to be is understanding verbal instructions, a bit like Star Trek all those years ago. I was watching Star Trek on one of the cable channels here yesterday, and they were doing just that. You know, they were, all those years ago, Captain Kirk and Bones and Spock were communicating with computers verbally, and that's what AI is going to be. So, for example, if you take your laptop to a new office and you want to link it to a computer, whenever I do that, I can't work it out. You know, I don't know which buttons to press, which things to bring down, what the macros mean. Well, in future, you'll just be able to say, laptop, link to the nearest computer, and it will do so. And that's what AI is. And NVIDIA, out of Santa Clara in California, is in the forefront of developing AI chips. They are streets ahead of everybody else. They have $10,000 chips. So advanced are they that they can't sell to the Chinese under Biden administration rules, but they're ahead of Intel and Micron and even ARM Holdings, which is based in Cambridge, north of London, where you are. So NVIDIA is run by a man called Jensen Huang. And at the moment, the shares are up somewhere between 2% and 3%, which adds billions to their value. They stand at $941 per share. They've just been upgraded this morning by a firm on Wall Street. So the range is now between $850 and $1,000. So you can see there's chance for that share price to grow, and a lot will depend on what they say on Wednesday. Finally, you have to remember, they can't grow forever. Everything is cyclical, and Wall Street is holding its breath. Just like that right now. Will it be this set of earnings on Wednesday, which come in not quite so good, or will it not be? And Wall Street thinks they're going to be okay. And based on that, on Friday, the Dow closed above 40,000 for the very first time. And here, Juliet, is the hat to prove it. That says Dow 40,000. They always produce a hat here when it crosses over a major milestone. Thank you very much, Peter, for the loan of that. This morning, the Dow has been above 40,000, but in keeping with the tradition of the Global Business Report, it isn't anymore. It's just gone down. Now it stands at 39,990. But it's not far off 40,000. That'll teach you for not coming over to me at 10 past the hour. You've got to get to me sooner.
Well, I just can't believe you didn't get your own hat. Maybe it's because you're still harbouring these dreams of being beamed up.
I have to borrow hats.
Yeah, you got to get a hat. So, look, let's talk about rates. What is driving rate cut hopes?
Well, there is a lot of information out there at the moment, plenty of signs that the economy is actually cooling now, which is what the Federal Reserve wants, but not cooling so much that it's heading towards a recession, which they also don't want. So last week we had wholesale inflation higher than expected. We had consumer inflation lower than expected. We had retail sales basically stagnant. So we know that earnings are okay, the consumer's okay, jobs are good, no recession on the horizon. And people, I think there was what you would call a light bulb moment. The light came on here last week. That is my assessment of it. Because everybody realized last week that all of those things are in place, and we're likely to get a rate cut in September now. And it's not just the central bank here. If you look at London, the Bank of England, look at Japan, look at India, look at even Brazil, all of those banks are poised to cut rates as well. So for those reasons, and the AI we were just talking about, the markets are being driven up. Nobody wants to be a bear at the moment, you know. Even if bad news comes in written form, or if somebody over at the Federal Reserve says something that isn't very bullish, then the markets are overriding it. They're just not paying attention to it. Everybody wants to buy, and that's the mood of the moment, although the Dow is down a little bit, but only by 14 points, not very much.
Just a smidge. And if you want to move those retail sales from being stagnant, buy the hat, John. Buy the hat. John Terrett at the New York Stock Exchange.
I could do. Thank you.
Great to see you. Bye for now.
Nickel has jumped more than 5%, the most in a month, as deadly unrest in New Caledonia raised concerns about disruption to the supplies from the French territory. More than 1,000 French police officers were deployed to restore calm after days of rioting over a change in voting rules. New Caledonia was the world's third biggest producer of the EV battery metal last year. The violence has disrupted output from French miner Eramet SA, which is running its local unit at minimum capacity. Well, let's speak now to our Paris correspondent, Ross Cullen. Ross, tell us more about the impact these protests have had on nickel prices.
Yeah, Paul, such a crucial part of New Caledonia's economy. Almost all of the island's exports are nickel, this crucial metal for battery, for some alloys, for anti-corrosion materials as well. New Caledonia in the top 3 producers worldwide, and some 25% of the island's workforce are in the nickel sector, either directly or indirectly, and the island is believed to have around about 25% of the world's reserves of the metal. However, it has been hit by the civil unrest that we have seen on the French overseas territory for the past week or so, as you say, running mines at minimum capacity, and that's caused a bump in prices. Nickel, often we see the prices traded on the London Metal Exchange in the British capital where you are. That's caused a bump because of concerns over supply in the short term. However, we have to look at the issues that New Caledonia has faced in terms of its nickel industry. Look at 2023. It was really hit by the fact that supply is going up, but prices are coming down. In terms of the production cost per tonne, that is higher for New Caledonia than it receives in its prices. So already a sector that was in crisis, hence why the French government just a few months ago announced this nickel pact, an injection of $200 million into New Caledonia's nickel industry to try to help prop it up. The island's responsible for about 6% of global output from nickel mines in 2023. So it is of crucial importance, but the fact that there is this civil unrest at the moment has really hit the industry. Is something that the French government was already focused on, and the fact that there have been these the riots and the fact that order is not fully yet restored has really focused minds when it comes to the current state of New Caledonia's economy and that support from the nickel industry going forward.
OK, Ross, let's talk a little bit more about the civil unrest and the politics behind it. The President, Emmanuel Macron, has been chairing this meeting to talk about the violence on the island. What's the latest on that?
Yeah, that's going to start any time now, Paul. In fact, the latest National Defence and Security Council, chaired by the President with senior members of the Cabinet. One of those who will also be attending this evening is Gabriel Attal, the Prime Minister. He has spoken a couple of hours ago, just ahead of that meeting, saying that, quote, "We are determined to restore order. We are still on the path to do that." So it's not fully achieved yet, this plan to try to regain state control of the whole of the island. We know that there are still pockets of rioters, there are still pockets of vigilante, these self-defence groups trying to protect their property. There have also been successes where the police have managed to break through barricades, but then we have also heard from New Caledonian residents who say that once the security forces move on, they just re-erect them with pallets, tyres and barrels. The airport is closed and will stay closed until at least Thursday. We know there are non-French nationals trying to leave as well, the evacuation of foreign citizens. We know that Macron is chairing this latest meeting. The two previous meetings, Paul, we have seen major announcements come out of them, such as additional security personnel or the announcement by Macron of a state of emergency imposed in the island. And so it's likely that after the conclusion of this third emergency meeting this evening, this Monday evening, there will be another announcement about how the state hopes to be able to regain control. Another 29 people have been arrested just today, Monday. Well over 200 people now arrested, and 5 people have lost their lives. 2 of those police officers whose bodies were returned to mainland France this Monday morning, and the Interior Minister has confirmed that he has awarded them high police honours awarded posthumously to those 2 officers.
Ross, thank you so much for bringing us right up to date on the situation. That's Ross Cullen in Paris.
China has added 3 American firms to its unreliable entities list. The Ministry of Commerce accuses General Atomics Aeronautical Systems, General Dynamics Land Systems and Boeing Defense, Space and Security of involvement in arms sales to the Taiwan region. Under the new rules, these companies are prohibited from engaging in import and export activities related to China and from making new investments in its market. Apple has slashed iPhone prices in China, offering discounts of more than $300 on select models. The US tech giant's looking to keep hold of its high-end smartphone market share and fend off increasing competition from local rivals such as Huawei. Apple's previous discounting effort in February appears to have helped increase its shipments by 12% in March.
Well, you can get highlights from the week's news in Europe and China direct to your inbox from CGTN's Storyboard email newsletter. You can sign up at europe.cgtn.com/newsletter.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead. Chief Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court seeks arrest warrants for both Israeli and Hamas leaders, accusing both sides of war crimes.
What do we mean when we talk about the difference?
Brazen axe.
The difference is in the detail, the background,
Defense ministers from
the wider angle and perspective of every story. Wherever the story may be. CGTN. See the difference.
We are all connected. Across borders, across continents, connected by ideas, a shared humanity. Stay connected.
Welcome back to Global Business Europe with Paul Barber and me, Juliet Mann. The headlines again. Iran declares 5 days of mourning over the death of President Raisi in a helicopter crash as the world leaders send condolences.
Unrest in New Caledonia sends the price of nickel surging. The French territory holds some of the world's biggest deposits of the critical mineral.
And Ryanair lands bumper full-year profits, but warns seat prices will not be taking off this summer.
The chief prosecutor for the International Criminal Court has announced that he's seeking arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, and 3 Hamas leaders, including Yahya Sinwar.
Karim Khan says there are reasonable grounds to believe they all bear criminal responsibility for war crimes and crimes against humanity committed in Israel and Gaza since October the 7th. ICC judges must now determine whether there's enough evidence to issue the warrants.
No one can act with impunity. Nothing on earth can justify willfully depriving human beings, including women and children, babies, the old and the young, of the basic necessities required for life. Nothing on earth can justify hostage taking or the targeting and killing of civilians.
Our correspondent Sarah Coates is in Tel Aviv with more on this. Hello, Sarah. So what's the reaction been in Israel to this call for arrest warrants?
Hello there, Paul. Absolutely furious reaction really coming in from right across the political spectrum here in Israel. The Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, he is calling this scandalous, reportedly telling a Likud party meeting a little earlier that this will not stop me or us. Now, we've also heard from the Finance Minister, Bezalel Smotrich. He's calling it a theatre of the absurd, while Benny Gantz, who we do need to remember is a very fierce rival of the Prime Minister, he is accusing the ICC of moral blindness. Now, we've also heard from the Minister Israel Katz, the Foreign Minister Israel Katz. He issued a statement saying that this is an unrestrained direct attack on the survivors of October 7 and also the hostages that do remain in the Gaza Strip. Now, he has issued the Foreign Ministry to set up an emergency situation room which is set to focus on fighting these charges. So certainly you can really say it's panic stations right around the country now. And what we can expect over the coming hours and the coming days, high-level meetings between the senior Israelis and also their lawyers, with Benjamin Netanyahu to speak a little later on. But here's what he said when all of this came to light in April.
80 years after the Holocaust, the international bodies that were founded to prevent another Holocaust are considering denying the Jewish state its right to defend itself. To defend itself against who? Against those who acted and are still working openly to commit genocide against us. What an absurdity. What a distortion of justice and of history. This will be the first time that a democratic country, which is fighting for its life according to all the rules of international law, is accused of war crimes.
Meanwhile, Sarah, a day of disruption is being held to call for Netanyahu's removal. What's the latest on that?
Certainly, people are absolutely furious. Protests are really stepping up right around the country. As we go to airport, there are thousands of people gathering in Jerusalem outside the Israeli parliament, the Knesset. Now, a little earlier, when they started their first summer sitting inside the Knesset, a number of these hostage families, they actually made their way in. They clashed with lawmakers, calling out to them, "You've had a summer break, our hostages have not." Now, one of these Likud members, we do need to remember that this is a member from Benjamin Netanyahu's party, they came out to say that your protests are destroying our country. Now, a little earlier today, early this morning, when many people were commuting along the road from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, many people blocked this road. They clashed with police. Some people were actually taken into custody for questioning. And what they're demanding, Paul, is they are demanding the immediate resignation of the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. They want fresh elections to be held right now and the immediate release of all these remaining 124 Israeli hostages.
Sarah, many thanks indeed. That's Sarah Coates reporting from Tel Aviv.
Our correspondent Akram Al-Satari has more on the reaction from Hamas.
Hamas made a special press statement. In that statement, Hamas was outlining, according to them, the atrocities the Palestinians have been subjected to ever since October 7th, and they have been deploring and condemning the decision of the chief prosecutor of the ICC, which the issuance of arrest warrants for the leaders of Hamas. They said the decision to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant came 7 months late, and that decision should have been made sometime in the past. And they said, according to the Rome Statute, Article number 25, 27, 28, arrest warrant should be issued for the sake of arresting the commanders, the ranking officers and the soldiers who were just committing the crimes against the Palestinian people, and even the ones who didn't take any kind of legal measure to stop the ongoing atrocities and the ongoing killing against the people of Gaza. They were providing an account of the suffering the Palestinians have been seeing for the last few months and calling for the international community to do something to stop them, and they were rejecting the principle of equating between the victim and the prosecutor, and they said that they have the full right, according to the all international charters, agreements and instruments, to resist the occupation, and that no arrest warrant should be issued against their leaders. They made all that summary, and they also highlighted they're going to continue their path towards resistance and liberation, and that the Israeli occupation should be held accountable because of the occupation and because of the continuation of the crimes committed against the people of Palestine.
Akram Al-Satari in Gaza. In other news, China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi is in Kazakhstan after a two-day trip to Tajikistan for the meeting of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Council of Foreign Ministers.
Member countries are expected to discuss improving bilateral ties in Central Asia, terrorism and stability in the region as well. Our correspondent Ravinder Bauer reports.
We have seen a lot of warmth between the leaders of the member nations who have come here to participate in the SCO foreign ministers meet. This morning, the first bilateral was between China and Kazakhstan, and the two leaders expressed how they are looking forward to the meeting on Tuesday. They spoke about, they have signed certain agreements on the issues of innovation and agriculture. These are the sectors which both the countries want to develop, and that is what they are working towards. As far as the agenda of the SCO summit, the meeting which is going to be held on Tuesday is concerned, there are national and international issues which the leaders will be talking about. They will be talking about stability in the region. That is something which has been the focus of SCO all along. In order to develop economic activity and trade, it is important that the region is stable, and that's what the focus of Kazakhstan has been as the chair of the SCO grouping in this year. They will be coming out with a joint communique after the meeting, after all the agreements are signed, and foreign ministers of various countries have arrived, and they are also holding bilaterals with each other. So a lot of hectic activity here in Astana as far as diplomacy is concerned.
Ravinder Bauer reporting. You're watching CGTN. Still ahead. With ancestry dating back to the Jurassic period, a pair of rare Chinese giant salamanders are the stars of a new reptile exhibit at the London Zoo.
Events have consequences. Words create impact.
Unprecedented scenes that we saw. The cleanup operation is now well and truly underway.
Parts of southern Europe remain in a state of emergency.
Context gives meaning. People make history.
Far more than 1,000 people have come here today.
But authorities are still on high alert.
So now we've actually become the border on this road.
A complex world demands a comprehensive view.
But with the cleanup efforts more or less under control,
the economic impact is bound to ripple across the country.
There's plastic pollution everywhere.
Because the world today matters for your world tomorrow.
This is the living area of the crew.
The focus is firmly on future technologies.
Well, this is something completely different.
The world today, every day on CGTN.
welcome back to the programme. A public inquiry has found that Britain's infected blood scandal that killed 3,000 people and left thousands more suffering with hepatitis or HIV was no accident. It blames a catalogue of failures by the government and doctors, accusing them of downright deception. After a 5-year investigation, the report concluded that the treatment disaster should and could have been largely avoided. More than 30,000 people were infected from 1970 to 1991 by contaminated blood products and transfusions. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has just been speaking in Parliament.
Today I want to speak directly to the victims and their families, some of whom are with us in the gallery. I want to make a wholehearted and unequivocal apology for this terrible injustice. Today's report shows a decades-long moral failure at the heart of our national life. From the National Health Service to the civil service, to ministers and successive governments, at every level, the people and institutions in which we place our trust failed in the most harrowing and devastating way.
WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange has won a last-ditch bid to appeal his extradition from the UK to the United States to face espionage charges. The US want to prosecute him over the publication of leaked documents on the Afghanistan and Iraq wars. Assange has resisted extradition from the UK for more than a decade. Our correspondent Yolo Abdafi is at the High Court in central London. Yolo, what will this decision lead to?
Well, the case in this actual hearing is over, and it seems that Julian Assange will be staying in Belmarsh high security prison for the time being. But it's not the end of the road of the extradition process, or indeed the legal challenges against him and WikiLeaks. So, but the two judges quite firmly, and really only after a couple of hours of listening to the arguments this morning by the barristers representing both sides, the US authorities and the Assange and the Free Assange team, decided that there was arguably a case that Assange and his lawyers could be discriminated against if he was extradited and appeared in an American court and not being able to use the First Amendment principle in an American court on American soil. He would be discriminated against as an Australian citizen because he's not a US national. And because of that, the judges decided that there is grounds for a full hearing, and of course that might be challenged as well. So the legal process goes on, but quite definitely this is, even though he's still inside a jail, this is seen as a decisive and quite a momentous moment for the Free Assange team.
This has been going on for years, Yolo. There have been twists and turns, highs and lows. So describe the reaction when this announcement was made outside the High Court.
Well, it didn't take long for the news to filter out from the court. I was in an overspill court. The barristers were hugging each other because they'd spent a couple of hours arguing, but outside there was jubilation and people were cheering. There were a few hundred supporters here today, just as there was on each of the 2 days of the hearing in February, and they were jubilant and they see it as a victory, even though, of course, this evening, just like last night, Julian Assange is still in a maximum security prison in the south of London. But they see it as a victory for press rights and freedom of press, because that's what they think this is about. It is about controlling the media and journalists who divulge secret documents like WikiLeaks did, and of course published them. That was Julian Assange, and that's why the US authorities are very, very keen to put 18 charges, 17 of espionage against him for revealing secret military and other classified information. But Stella Assange, his wife, came out after the hearing, and of course there is also another impact on Julian Assange's life, as she described.
This case is shameful, and it is taking an enormous toll on Julian. This case should just be abandoned. The Biden administration should have dropped it from day one. that now is a right moment for the Biden administration to drop it.
And that gives you an idea, I think, that no euphoria there, but Stella Assange and other people know that this is having a huge impact on Julian Assange. They're inquiring, you know, after 13 years of these of being basically detained, they want now to see him being released. They want the Americans to drop the charges. President Joe Biden said he might do that in April, and Australian politicians of both sides, all the sides of the political divide in Australia, are also asking for him to be released and allow him to return home to Australia.
Yeah, David, outside the High Court in London. Thank you.
Russian missile strikes have targeted Ukraine's second largest city of Kharkiv, killing at least 11 people and injuring dozens more. The attacks struck a busy lakeside resort on the edge of Kharkiv, as well as villages in the surrounding region. Moscow launched its offensive in the northeastern area earlier this month, stretching Kiev's forces in the third year of the conflict. The suspects in the assassination attempt on Slovakian Prime Minister Robert Fico may not have been acting alone. The country's interior minister says the team is still investigating the man who shot Fico in the small town of Handlover on Wednesday. The Prime Minister's life is no longer in danger following 2 operations, but the 59-year-old is still in intensive care. South Africa's highest court has ruled that the former president, Jacob Zuma, is not eligible to run for parliament in next week's election. The court dismissed Zuma's complaint against an electoral commission decision that a previous conviction for contempt prevented him from becoming a member of parliament. Zuma, who was forced to quit as president in 2018, has fallen out with the governing ANC party and has been campaigning with a newly formed party. Armed forces in the Democratic Republic of Congo say they've killed the leader of Sunday's attempted coup. He's been named as US-based Congolese politician Christian Malanga. 50 others, including 3 American citizens, have also been arrested. The foiled attacks took place at the presidential palace in the capital, Kinshasa, and at the home of a member of parliament. A brutal heatwave is affecting voters in the 5th phase of India's general election. Temperatures soared above 47 degrees Celsius in many parts of the country, including in the capital, Delhi, forcing voters to turn out early to avoid the scorching afternoon sun. Votes will be counted on June 4th, with Prime Minister Narendra Modi seeking a rare 3rd consecutive term.
A pair of rare Chinese giant salamanders are the stars of a new reptile exhibit at London Zoo. The display is aimed at highlighting joint conservation work by China and the UK to save the species in its native habitat. Our correspondent Kitty Logan reports.
Emerging from the shadows of this sanctuary, a Chinese giant salamander, sensing that food is coming. With ancestry dating back to the Jurassic period, this female, named Professor Liu, is a modern-day survivor. London Zoo adopted her after UK border officials disrupted smugglers. Now she's settling into a new home.
This species is incredibly rare in the wild, so we spent about 7.5 years of survey effort with our partners in China and found just 24 individuals, so the species is in real big trouble.
London Zoo created this bespoke reptile house to share its global conservation work, putting rare species in the spotlight.
We have about 33 different species from around the world. Over half of those are edge species, so these evolutionarily distinct and globally endangered species.
2 giant salamanders were moved to the new facility, stopping for checkups on the way. Researchers want to analyse DNA to learn about different types of the species. The pair were then dropped into separate tanks. These specially designed rocks and caves create an ideal space for these shy creatures to eventually meet and reproduce.
The vast majority of these giant Chinese salamanders have vanished from their natural habitat in recent generations. This female here is one of a breeding pair, and the zoo is hoping that one day in the near future they might produce offspring.
Giant salamanders originate in the rivers of central China, and here the Zoological Society of London has joined Chinese conservationists to save the species.
The first thing to do was to kind of find out where salamanders were, what they were threatened by, and to make sure that there was local capacity for their conservation.
Poaching is a major factor in the salamander's decline, and so a Chinese environmental group is working to change public perception.
Our common mission for my organization and ZSL is we try to build a new image for Chinese public. The salamander is our friend.
But around 90% of its natural habitat has gone too, with water pollution a key threat.
The survival rate for those released salamander can be very low. So I think the first step is to clean up the river to make sure the habitat is suitable for salamander.
It is a challenge to house the world's largest amphibian. It can grow to 1.8 metres long and weigh around 50 kilograms. But scientists are passionate about protecting this living fossil.
This species is really important because it's evolutionarily distinct and globally endangered. So by protecting this ancient lineage of amphibian, you're not only protecting all of that evolutionary history, but all of that future evolutionary potential.
These are the only Chinese giant salamanders in UK zoos. They could soon start a new breeding programme, giving the species a more certain future here and in its native habitat in China. Kitty Logan, CGTN, London.
And that is it for Global Business Europe. Thank you for watching.
Coming up next on CGTN is Africa Live, but we'll see you again tomorrow, same time, same place. From all the team here in London, goodbye.
Goodbye.